I'm Armstrong Williams, and thank you so much for joining us. You know, we focus so much on the nation's capital, national, international issues, but not enough on our neighbor, the state of Maryland. So we want to kick tonight's show off with the executive producer and managing editor of Spotlight on Maryland, and she also happens to work for our Baltimore Sun, none other than Candy Woodall. Candy, welcome to the broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us, I'm going to have a little fun with you in the beginning here. Tell us about this new guy, Jesse Minter.
I wish I knew more about him, but I love all the memes. I love all the memes. Yesterday on WBFF Fox 45, they said Minter is coming, like winter is coming from Game of Thrones. And of course, they're talking about, you know, not just a winter storm, but a Minter storm. So there's a lot of excitement.
Now, Candy, you're assuming our national audience knows who Jesse Minter is.
You're right. I am assuming that.
Yes.
He is the new coach of the Baltimore Ravens.
Yes. He was once he coached on the defensive team with the Ravens, so he's really coming back home.
Right. It's a homecoming. And I think there's certainly a lot of excitement, you know, in Baltimore about that, especially after a disappointing end to the football season. You
know, I think what you guys are doing at Spotlight on Maryland is a spotlight for the nation. You know, your USA Today background, talk about Spotlight on Maryland and the kind of issues that you actually put a spotlight on to explain the issues in Maryland, and many times they're national in scope.
They are. I mean, a lot of the problems that we see here, you know, are problems across the country. For example, we did an investigation on what lawyers refer to as senior trafficking. This is something going on in many states, but it's only been reported on in reports, you know, internal reports that the public doesn't get to see and most people don't know about. And we've, you know, unearthed that and put that out. And, you know, but there are these problems we know of in Georgia, North Carolina, Texas, and other states are dealing with it in different ways. And you know, we wanted to reveal this issue to the public. It's important what our seniors are going through. But with all of our investigations, what we're really trying to do is, you know, be that watchdog for the public, for the taxpayer, for the voter. That's whose side we're on. It's not about red or blue for this team. It really is about we're on the side of the people at home, people watching, the taxpayers, the voters, so that they can make informed decisions when they do go to the polls.
You know, one of the issues that started with President Trump in Texas is this redistricting. It has become a big issue with the president of the Senate, Bill Ferguson. He seems to be in great conflict with the governor of the state of Maryland, Wes Moore. Talk about that conflict that continues to brew and where you think it may end up, and what does it say for the rest of the country, especially neighboring Virginia?
Right. So I think this issue is one that's often misunderstood. If you go out and ask the average person, you know, walking down the street, they don't know what redistricting is. And, you know, we try to explain, you know, these maps and the changes. And there are a lot of folks out there who feel like, well, why are we redistricting again? We want to get rid of the one Republican representative that Maryland has. A lot of people feel like these maps were already gerrymandered, and now, you know, we're going to have complete one-party representation for the state of Maryland, which is surely a blue state, you know, more Democrats perhaps registered here. But I've talked to a number of Democrats who say, you know, I'm really more of an independent. And I'm only registered as a Democrat because I want to be able to vote in the primary. And I think there's a sense of, is this fair? It feels like, you know, rigging maps. You know, that's what I actually heard from a writer who sent me an email this morning. And they feel like the maps are being rigged. And it seems like, you know, Senate President Ferguson has been very adamant that he doesn't think this is a good idea. He doesn't want to do this. There is support, though, in the House, and, you know, Governor Moore has moved forward in doing this. Democrats will say, look, Republicans started rigging the maps first. They started in red states changing this because, we are in an election year, we're in the midterm year, right? And who's going to get control of the US House or Senate? That's what's at stake. And if you are a true blue voter out there, maybe you like some of these moves. Maybe you believe this is something that we need to protect against too much Republican control in Washington. But in doing so, you might have only one party representation. And there are Republicans in the state of Maryland who want to be represented in Washington and in Annapolis.
There's so much about the SNAP program, a lot of the government largest programs, but one of the focuses that you guys have covered and spotlight on Maryland is how elected officials, it doesn't matter who they are finding a way to get around the SNAP program to sort of manipulate it for their own benefit. And one of the people that's in the spotlight is the governor of Maryland and his administrators. Talk about that controversy and what have you learned about the SNAP program and how people have learned to work around that?
Spotlight on Maryland is investigating allegations that the senior officials at the Maryland Department of Human Services knowingly allowed food stamp payment errors to remain uncorrected. And allegedly they were doing this because of a loophole that allowed states with really high payment error rates to avoid federal penalties until they would bring those rates down a little bit. The allegations are that these senior officials wanted to keep it high to avoid penalties that would be $240 million for the state of Maryland. Now, that's not money that would be paid, to the USDA or the feds in any way. That is just money that the state would have to provide on its own to cover SNAP payments in Maryland. And of course, as you know, Maryland is facing a $1.4 billion budget deficit. It doesn't have money, for penalties and extra things like that. So that's what's been alleged by these whistleblowers. We've talked to multiple whistleblowers and former employees in the state of Maryland, in the Department of Human Services. And, one of our colleagues took those questions to Governor Moore. Is this happening, in your DHS? And he said no. He said the allegations are false. He said that there was an investigation that proved that those allegations are false. So Spotlight on Maryland, of course, wanted to follow up with the governor and ask him about those allegations, because he did say that the investigation would be made public. However, he has not answered 10 of our questions. His office has not responded to 10 of our questions, which I will say are very basic in nature. They are: what investigation? When did you conduct the investigation? Who did the investigation? Very basic things. None of those questions were answered.
Let me interject at a more important development in this. If there is no credibility to your investigations, why was the whistleblower fired?
Well, so the whistleblower alleges that they believe it was retaliation because they told their superiors, I'm going to go and tell people about this. I'm going to go to the OIG. And this whistleblower, by the way, has a legal background, used to work in the federal government as well. And so, this person wrote to the governor in November, no response. Wrote to 18 lawmakers in November, no response. Sent something to the Office of Legislative Audits. And the whistleblowers involved have been contacted by investigators, but none from Wes Moore's office or any of the states there. Nobody from the governor's office has contacted them. They're hearing from inspectors general at state and federal levels, but nobody within the governor's office. So why were they terminated? There was not a reason, but we've seen their termination letter, and there wasn't a clear reason, just that they've decided to go in a different direction. There was nothing disciplinary.
Let me raise this, because you hear about the allegations even against the Trump White House and how they now do business. They have no respect for the rule of law. They're taking these issues to the Supreme Court. I mean, you have people in positions who have no experience. I mean, how does how, let's just say, the blue states or the progressives or the Democrats feel about Donald Trump? Do you think, because of this environment that we find ourselves in, that even if all this is true, the governor's approval ratings are still at 52%, they've dropped somewhat, but does it give him a pass where people just really don't care anymore because of the standard that we have now coming from the White House?
That is an excellent question for the voters. I can tell you what we hear from Marylanders. And to be honest, what we hear the most is, I don't like either party right now, and I don't like politics, or politics is dirty, or the government is corrupt. Like, that is a perception. And as you know, there is a major trust problem for many of our institutions, whether it's state government, federal government, Supreme Court, even the media. There's a major trust gap right now.
How do we, for the profession that we find ourselves in, how do we get back that trust where people trust us, we have the credibility, they see us as referees and not an advocate for anything except the facts?
I think that it's one story at a time, one question at a time. We always show our questions at Spotlight on Maryland. Frequently, we will literally list our questions in stories that run in the Baltimore Sun, and we put them on screen for WBFF and WJLA so that the audience can see exactly what we're asking. And then they can see what was not answered, and they can decide fair question or not, and then they can wonder, why isn't somebody answering that question? And they make their own determinations. But we try to show our work. We try to always approach every story. We're very committed to accuracy, fairness. And I think that, I think viewers can see that. I think they can see that when we're asking fair questions.
Candy Woodall, the executive producer of Spotlight on Maryland, has been a joy having this chat with you, and I look forward to doing more in the future. Thank you for joining us. When we're returning here with Your Voice, Your Future, Steve Laffey will join us to talk about the economy. Steve Laffey, it's always a pleasure having you on. What was your takeaway as it regards to tariffs? Why did the president back down on using force to take over Greenland? What do you think was said? Even though the details have not yet come out, what's your take, being the international businessman you are?
The furor and the amount of people, even within the Republican Party in America, was too much for him to handle. He realized that he had gone beyond his power when dealing with Greenland. He made statements that he had to own it. He didn't have to own it. He knew he had to know the 1951 treaty lets us at one point we had 30 bases there. 30 bases. And under Trump, we took one of them out. So these are the things that have been the problem for the president. But the Canadian premier, the day before President spoke at Davos, talked about the rupture in the alliance. Combine that with some of the messaging he sent out to Norway and to Finland at the same time, talking about not wanting peace because he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize, even though they had nothing to do with it. There was a lot of pushback. I imagine that finally someone like Scott Bessent, the Secretary Treasurer, after the stock market went down 2% and was starting to head down again, said, Mr. President, you got to stop this right now. Somebody got to him. And this is going to be the continuing problem for President Trump. He can't control himself. Whatever he gets out of Greenland, he would have had just by calling him on the phone.
You know what? Listen, I believe in journalism, you must be even-handed and fair. Obviously, we know that the president has a problem with tone and diplomacy. But what we don't focus on enough is the European problem. And something that the president did speak on that was absolutely correct as it relates to immigration and assimilation, how it disrupted budgets, deficits, housing all across Europe. The fact that immigration did not work. It's an uncomfortable truth that Europe just does not want to deal with. And all no matter how erratic the president's speech may have been, you cannot excuse Europe for why we're in this predicament today, why they decided to go into Greenland with troops, because they have not been carrying their weight for the past decade, and we've given them a pass. And the president, you can say, blows the place up, whatever he does, and as much as you criticize him, finally we're talking about putting teeth in the United States really controlling Greenland. We know China is a threat. The Soviet Union is a threat, Steve Laffey. So let's talk about Europe.
Yes, and he is exactly right, and has done a wonderful job from 2016, 2017 on of getting NATO to go from less than 2%. He's correct about some of these numbers. I don't have them in front of me, but some countries in NATO were spending less than 1% on their GDP, and they're going up to 5%, almost all of them. And Putin helped out by invading Ukraine because, now in NATO you have some great fighters in Finland, in countries that we didn't think were ever going to join, like Finland, join NATO. But the president goes so much beyond this by saying things like NATO's never helped America. If you're listening to that and you're in Denmark, and on September 11th and September 12th, they 2001, invoked Article 5, and you lost as a percentage of your population as many or more people as Americans in Afghanistan, helping America, who started both of those things, you're pretty ticked off.
Yeah, but also what you're not focusing on is in Greenland, the United States is the reason why 50,000 people who reside there can live an upper middle class life, because we are the financial stability of Greenland and have been for quite some time. And I don't think people realize that. It's as if they're American citizens benefiting greatly in a way. It is our taxpayer dollars that provide the stability for their way of life.
Listen, America set it up in a selfish way after 1945 to benefit America. We built up everything, and those alliances meant, all the way till Trump came along in his second term, that we get our way in America. But what's happening now, because he's going too far, is that Canada is talking about the rupture. And guess what Canada is doing? They go to China. They're going to build Chinese cars in Canada. How is that helpful to Ford Motor Company? Not helpful. See, he's blowing up the alliance, and these secondary effects that we talked about on this show a year ago are starting to happen. They'll take a couple more years, Armstrong, for people who feel it, but we're never going back.
Are we blowing it up? Or did he just say, because we're at the negotiated table with the United Nations Secretary General, there will be no tariffs on any of these European countries? Is it a negotiating tactic? Because a lot of this stuff, I admit, it's a lot of air. But in the end, look at the results. He doesn't end up doing what he says he's going to do. It's his tactic. That's how he operates.
It is his tactic, and it might work in real estate, but it doesn't work when international countries go in a different direction.
But we've been trying to use diplomacy for decades and decades, and look at what it's gotten us.
But when it came to Greenland specifically, Denmark has always said, please put more soldiers there. Please, let's get some minerals out. We want you there. It was America that went from 30 locations to 1. And some of it under Donald Trump. We all realize the gap on a map between what's happening between continental America, Greenland, Iceland, the United Kingdom. Everybody can look at that. And we realize that we have great allies that stop Russia from coming out of the Baltic. They're called the Scandinavian countries. There is zero interest in Americans, by the way, who are totally against the way this was handled, to do anything other than say, we're going to put more people under this treaty in 1951. We're moving more in, and Denmark is like, great. But now what you have is a rupture where people and the secondary and tertiary effects of the tariffs that remain in place
And a
are going to
rupture
hurt
means
America in the long
in a
term, but they
Russia-
help America in the short term.
But are you defining rupture as that the biggest threat to Europe now is the United States?
No. Rupture is simply them realizing, and they call themselves now the middle countries. It sounds like J.R. Tolkien in The Lord of the Rings. But the middle
Earth.
countries that they're saying have to unite to get what they want. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with criticizing Europe. There's nothing wrong with saying these kind of things. It's simply wrong to say that other NATO countries have never come to America's behalf. You shouldn't say that. It's not true. The only time Article 5 was invoked was after 9/11 when they came to help us. Canadians hid American hostages in the Iran crisis in '79.
But what about the sanctimonious positions of Sturmer and Macron?
Well, listen, they are very sanctimonious, and Europe does, and President Trump is totally correct. The 7 biggest countries in Europe or tech companies 20 years ago are the same today. That's not true in America. They have stagnation. They're not growing. But folks, listen carefully. When Germany rearms, not if now, when Germany rearms and they take a lead position in Europe, we're heading for another war. Like, this is what happens in Germany, right? So this is what happens not short term, 5-10 years from now. It's not good when Germany wants to rebuild. It's not good.
I'm sorry. I got so much to talk to you about because
I know.
we have our CIA operative who will follow you to talk more about these issues. Talk about the U.S. economy. I want to talk about the policy choices that could restore long-term economic confidence and the indicators that Americans should watch for instead of political talking points about what's really going on with their economy.
One of the biggest ones is what's happened with credit card debt over the last year, and President Trump has actually spoken about this because he knows the midterms are coming up and he wants to do something about it. He's not taking the right exact
10% flat rate on interest on credit cards, which I love, but the banks are not going to allow it.
No, well, the banks are going to have to allow something, but credit card debt is up 5% year over year, and here's the worst part about that. A year ago, 53% of people hadn't paid off their credit cards in a year. Ooh. Today, 61%. That's a huge increase over the last year. So consumers are strained because their wages, this, by the way, middle class, lower middle class people, not talking about Wall Street, not talking about Palo Alto, California, their wages have not kept up with the 25% increase in cost. They can't buy a home, right? I mean, they're out of the market for homes because rates have gone up. And so people are trying to figure out, this is what's going to head into these midterm elections, what is going to be the messaging for all this? Because you can look at credit card debt all the time, and at some point what happens is, boom, you have a crisis, a real crisis like 2008. Look at what's happened with auto loans. What happens to auto loans is that it used to be never more than a 5-year loan. Now they're like 8 because you lower the payments a little bit so people can afford it. But guess what? They're underwater on their cars. They're not underwater on their homes because homes have appreciated. But what we've got to do something about is the long-term supply of homes. So we're not doing anything about this, by the way. We've had a year under the second Trump administration. We had 4 years under Biden. We have a problem with local people, local places run by Democrats mostly, who put nothing but extra cost in solar panels and windmills and all this kind of stuff. And Donald Trump is doing stuff about that. But it's not going to help in the short term. But yes, the consumer of America is under great strain. As of today, they are spending wildly, right? But that won't go on forever.
We got to talk about the Affordable Care Act and how the fact is that Donald Trump wants to finally put these insurance companies and insurers in place by removing them and allowing the American people not to deal with the middleman. That's important if that moves forward.
It's really important now. I don't see him actually writing checks to people to actually, buy their own insurance yet, right? I mean, I don't see that happening. But we have a giant problem with insurance. Most people go bankrupt in the middle class over healthcare costs. By the way, extra credit card debt is mostly over emergencies in healthcare. It costs way too much. The president has done some things about it by edict. But what we need is legislation. And by the way, this will be a great thing before the elections of November. For for the president and for Republicans to get real things done on healthcare. The things we've talked about. We should not be paying more for prescription drugs than people in Germany or any other industrial countries. Even though we talked about it, we haven't passed legislation about it that's actually working. We've got to make sure insurance companies that your insurance does cross state lines like your auto insurance does, right? There's lots of things that we can do here. It's going to take legislation. It's going to take some Democratic votes. This is something the president could really focus on and have a great victory, because remember, look back at all the presidents who were considered great. You can't name more than 3 things about Ronald Reagan. The president makes the mistake of having a comment about something every day. He just needs to he accomplished illegal immigration. Hats off, Mr. President. You won.
Before I say goodbye, because we have a CIA operative coming up, people worry so much about interest rates and how interest rates affect small businesses and homeowners, and even you see what the war between the president and Jerome Powell. Put it in perspective quickly for us in 45 seconds.
The president is right about Jerome Powell and interest rates and what's happened with Jerome Powell. He simply picked a construction site to go after him. Jerome Powell should have been fired because of the terrible job of keeping inflation above 2%, his stated goal, it should be 0, for more than 5 years. I mean, you can fire anybody over that for cause, but they don't focus on that. Also, we got to get the Federal Reserve out of the unemployment situation. That's a congressional decision. That's what they do. We need them to only control the money supply and keep inflation at 0. That would be a big winner for Donald Trump if he had started that way, or if he picks it up tomorrow. Inflation at 0 should be the mantra. And then go after Powell for that. He can win on that.
Yes, Steve, it's always a pleasure. We got to move on to our operative, and we'll be back. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
We'll be back.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence. There's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com. At Davos, our president spoke a truth Europe has worked to silence. A civilization that abandons borders, law, and assimilation in the name of compassion will not endure. Mercy severed from responsibility does not heal, it actually dissolves. Europe did not drift here. It applauded its own undoing. Much of its media, mistaken moral vanity for justice, has treated borders as sin and identity as shame, cheering policies that weaken cohesion while solacing dissent that is not progress, it is abdication. Europe's legacy, law above power, conscience above coercion, ordered liberty forged through centuries of sacrifice must be defended now, not apologized for. And if this course continues, you're at risk of future shaped not by renewal, but by paralysis, where democratic momentum and moral exhaustion create space for Islamic ideology, and explicitly political and theocratic project to advance as confidence in these liberal democracy as it collapses. History is clear, America. Vacuums do not remain empty. And America should not look away. In Minnesota, protests now breach church services, places once understood as sacred and off limits. That line is crossed when law hesitates and moral authority erodes. A society like ours especially cannot protect its sanctuaries, is already bargaining with decline. And we as Americans must face this truth. Much of the unrest is fueled by dark money and organized paid protesters testing the outer limits of the rule of law. This is not dissent, it's a deliberate stress test. When lines are crossed, the process must be, and the response must be swift and unmistakable. As the Attorney General said, lock them up. These arrests must be real. The jail time must be real. And these things, arrests and real jail time, are not excess. They're necessary. A free society endures only when it makes clear that chaos will not be tolerated and the law will be forced. This is the stark lesson for us. Tolerance without truth is surrender. Compassion without limits is chaos. And Mr. Operative, you're well aware of this. History will not ask what we intended, only what we defended. And the hour is late and the choice remains. And as much as they criticize President Trump for his tactics and Davos, explain to them what's happening now in real time after the president's negotiation tactics actually work, Mr. Operative.
Thank you, Armstrong. And your comments were prescient on where we are right now. The president did things his own way, his own unorthodox way, and a lot of people are offended by that. But you raised a really good point earlier in your show that we have been trying to do things like this for the last 15, 20 years, and it hasn't produced a result. Trump went to Davos after he teed everything up before he went there and came away with what he needed. You've got more troops there. 7 different countries sent their people there, and they're pledged to increase their spending in NATO. The U.S. is no longer going to just carry the freight for all these other countries. And you're seeing this play out now, the foolishness of some of the leadership figures in the European theater, in Canada especially, when they say we're going to change our whole economy and work with China. Carney has lost his marbles, and I live next door to that country. The people that you see Canadians every single day, they come across the border to go to the grocery store. They come across the border to fill their car up with gas. They hate Toronto and Ottawa. The average Canadian is really no different than the Americans that live along the border. They're good, hardworking people that live next door to a country that's enormously powerful, and they benefit from that, and they know it. And the cost of living in Canada is breathtaking for just basic services. And even the police gave up during the last round of protests last winter because they just realized they couldn't stop what was happening. Farmers from Montana were driving across the border with fuel bowsers behind their tractors to fuel truckers who were blocking the road. And the police in Canada just didn't do anything. They knew we can't stop this. And these guys didn't go through the border crossing. They just drove across the line. There's no line there. Where you have a crossing, there's still, in many cases, a bicycle chain with a little sign on it that says Canadian border. That's it. There's no gate, there's no wall, there's no fence, there's nothing. And cows go across from Canada and come into America, and Canadians come across the border and gather them up and bring them back. And the same thing happens on the American side. We've been living next door to them since we were a country, and it just works. What doesn't work is people like Carney. He's a fool. He's going to change his economic model when 75% of what Canada produces is exported to the United States. Really? That's his plan? And people in Canada don't want Chinese cars. They want pickup trucks because it's an agrarian society outside of the major cities, and they sell timber. When you're harvesting timber, you're in the wilderness of half of Canada.
You know, I got to tell you what I found fascinating with all that was going on in Davos. Waltz and Jared Kushner was meeting with Vladimir Putin.
Yep. All of that is connected. Trump, it's difficult to measure because there's so much noise to try and obliterate what he's actually doing and what the results are that come. You're not seeing a lot of this being explained on the mainstream media. The independent outlets are the ones that are carrying what's really going on. Trump is getting results. He does it in a way that people are offended by it. He's rude, oh, he's mean, all this stuff. It's just laughable.
So what do you think? What do you think was going on between Wyckoff and the Putin? All smiles. You think we're any closer to ending the conflict in Ukraine? Are they feeling inspired by what they're seeing with what they call American aggression? And then what are the Chinese doing with this in terms of their strategic posture toward the United States right now, watching all this?
They're watching it, but they're watching it from a position of informed and good intelligence. They understand what Trump is doing, but they're looking at, is he accomplishing anything? And the answer to that is yes, he's getting his way. They're paying close attention. Witkoff is a great negotiator. He's gotten positive results on a number of fronts for the Trump administration, and he's got a relationship now with the people that he needs to talk to about Ukraine. Ukraine is a vexing problem, and there's a lot of blame to go around, and we're not blameless.
Well, how does Iran fit into this current global balance of power? And do you think we're entering a more unstable, multipolar world?
I think the Iranian thing is a special event, a special issue, and part of the problem is I don't believe the intelligence community has the tools that should be applied. There's a way that they historically have done covert action stuff, but you have to purpose build your response to every country. There's not a manual that says, oh, covert action 401, this is what we have to do. You can't do it that way. The Iranian people are almost 100% disarmed. They're now at the mercy of the savagery of the Iranian theocratic regime, bringing in murderers from Yemen and Lebanon and Syria and Al-Qaeda people from Afghanistan and Pakistan. These people are there's the horrific videos that are getting out of that country should wake people up. This is what happens when you're unarmed. You can't fight your government. We should have a program to help the Iranian people the way we helped in World War II. We had brilliant tools at our disposal. If you had countries like they had then that didn't have enough firearms, they invented a pistol that was produced. It's called a Liberator. It was a 45 caliber pistol.
Let me raise this with you before we move on. It seems as though the intelligence communities abroad are having relevance again.
I wouldn't go that far. I haven't seen any relevance yet. There's a demand for intelligence that needs to be better, but I haven't seen it. Now, granted, I'm not a consumer inside the White House, but I look at it from my optic, and I know the curse that officers like me have is we know what the intelligence community is capable of doing when it's well led. And right now, I don't think they're meeting that threshold. The president is constantly looking for information, and he's starting to get it from alternative sources because the official product that he gets is dated, wordy, and generally a little blurred. It's not really accurate.
Well, I tell you what, your voice is accurate. I don't know anyone who's more accurate and on point, and I've dealt with you for years. Your intelligence is just irrefutable. But thank you always joining us on such short notice. We're going to lighten this thing up a little when we come back here on our January. Can you believe it's Monday, January 26th? I mean, we're a week away from February. Where did the time go? When we come back, we're going to have some fun with Willie Jolley's new book. I'm Armstrong Williams, your voice, your future. We'll be back.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
And let's welcome back to the show. You know, I'm sitting here reading old Willie Jolley propaganda. Wealth propaganda, that is. He says, host of the #1 wealth building show on Sirius. You're a bad boy. You're a bad boy. And listen, you got to see the title. Look, rich is good, wealthy is better. What's up, brother?
How you doing, my dear friend?
What's going on? I guess people want to be rich and wealthy, right?
They want to be rich. They say they want to be wealthy, and they end up being rich, not knowing the difference.
Okay, here's the question. Here's the question.
All right.
What is the core difference between being rich and being wealthy?
Well, you know, I've been on Sirius XM now for 20 years, hosting the Willie Jolley Wealthy Ways show, interviewing billionaire after billionaire, David Rubenstein, David Stewart, Bob Johnson, Sheila Johnson, Bill Marriott. And one day that light bulb went off above my head where I realized there's a difference between being rich and wealthy. I thought I was the only one who didn't know. So I went around the country.
Well, it all had to do with assets.
You got it.
I know.
So
I get it.
I went around and talked to people, and I asked people, what's rich to you? And everybody put up their hand. #1 answer, $1 million. I say, if $1 million is rich, what's wealthy? And they'll look up in the air, they'll ponder, and they'll say, maybe 5, 10.
That's what you want. You want to be wealthy.
But they don't know what the difference. But look, here's what I found out. If you gave everybody a ball and told them to hit a wall, they'd hit it. Now, if you took a blindfold over their eyes and turned them around and said, which direction are you going? Now hit the same wall. Can you do it so easily? No. You can't hit what you don't know, and you can't hit what you can't see.
Let me tell you how I describe it.
Okay.
I describe it, I use my producer, Aaron, who's new and young.
Yes.
18, who's seasoned. Aaron is rich, 18 is wealthy.
Absolutely.
That's the difference. There's a difference.
So here's what I found out from...
Explain the difference between being rich and wealthy. Come on now, focus in on it.
Here it is. The difference is rich is the result of money you earn from what you do.
There you go. There you go. Now you're talking. That's Aaron. I'm describing Aaron.
Wealthy is the result of money you generate from what you own. And you typically get rich during the day.
And it's over time. The wealth is over time.
Over time. And you get wealthy at night while you sleep. I was in Cleveland. I'm speaking for a big event, and the client takes me to a fancy restaurant. One of the Cleveland Browns star football players walks through the restaurant with his entourage. The client says, hey, come over. You got to meet Dr. Willie Jolley. The young man comes over with his fur coat and his jewelry and his diamond bracelet.
Looking rich.
Oh, well, boy. And he has an entourage. He got the whole group.
Right.
And the client says, Dr. Jolley teaches people how to be wealthy. The young man says, I'm already wealthy, but I guess I can learn more. Give me your card. I gave him my card. He and the entourage left, and I said to my client, I said, he thinks he's wealthy, but he's rich. The owner's wealthy.
Yeah. You know, why do so many high earners never become truly wealthy?
Because, for one, they don't know the difference. They think wealthy is rich, so they think that they got money, that they're wealthy, but
that money will fool them.
Their money will fool them.
Yeah.
And so what happens, they get to a level of rich, and they think they have arrived. There's another level. And my job in this book is twofold. Number one, teach people who want to be wealthy how to get there through all the lessons I learned.
But you got to break down the importance of having real assets.
Well, that's the secret.
Yeah, let's talk about the assets.
Well, the secret is owning assets. It's owning. In the book, I got 8 streams of income that you can own. You can own real estate. You can own stocks and bonds. You can own crypto. You can own
art,
collectibles,
timepieces, watches.
All of that is
timepieces,
something that has value.
Horses.
All the above. But
it's value.
You got to know those things, and you got to invest. So wealth has 3 stools. It has income. You got to have income. Then
residual also.
That's right.
Okay.
Residual. You got to have income. Then you got to have investment. You got to live below your means.
The stock market. The stock market is a great one. Oh, yes.
Right. You live below your means and invest the difference. The third one, you got to have insurance. You got to have insurance to protect the asset. Because if you get sick or you have disability, you have a car crash, you don't want to attack that asset to take care of that crisis. And so through the book, I'm telling people, that's one, helping people who want to be wealthy. But the big group that is buying the book in droves, Armstrong, are all the people who have worked hard all their lives, scrimped, saved, sacrificed to create a nest egg, but they're concerned that children are going to squander it.
But you know, why is income alone a misleading measure of success?
Well, because there's 5 types of wealth, and I talk about it in the book. Of course, there's financial wealth, but the number one is
health wealth.
Health, baby. Health wealth. Number one. Look, it is reported.
You can't enjoy it.
You can't enjoy it.
You got to be healthy. I get it.
That Steve Jobs on his deathbed said, "I give all the billions away for more time." And then third wealth is relationship wealth. Not just where you're going, who's going with you. Fourth wealth is reputational wealth.
Oh yeah.
What do people say about you when
Yep.
you're not around? And the fifth wealth is intellectual capital wealth. What do you know and what are people willing to pay you? Or as I say in these interviews, how do you use what you know to get more dough?
So what mistakes do nouveau rich people, the mistakes that they often make?
The mistake they make is they try and look rich. So they got a $5,000 pocketbook, but they got $50 in their bank account, or they got a little money. They look rich. They are trying to make the appearance, or as they say in the South, big hat, no cow.
But you know, now let me just tell you something. I'm talking about aging today. You can look rich and still you look wealthy, and you are wealthy.
Well, yeah, that is true.
But it's a generation thing.
It's a generation.
Age. You earn that. Yes.
And not look.
Not everybody who. Don't assume that everybody who looks wealthy is not wealthy now, because let me tell you something.
But Buffett still lives in the house that he bought 50 years ago, drives not a brand new Cadillac.
Yeah,
okay?
but you haven't been inside that house.
Well, no, I'm just saying, but it's a great house.
Yes,
it's not a term.
Okay.
I'm saying to you that you asked the question, what is the big deal? The deal is thinking. Wealth starts in your mind.
Wealth is about systems, not salaries. Systems and not salaries.
That is exactly a chapter in the book. You must have read the book. The book says wealth is about systems and not secrets or salaries. It's a powerful book. This book is going to look. Here's the biggest compliment.
What realization changed everything for you in writing this book?
Oh, the biggest thing that changed my life is that wealth starts in the mind, and it starts with discipline. And
and sacrifice.
Come on, I'm getting ready to hit you with it. And that discipline starts with tithing.
Oh, you got to tithe. You got to give to God.
You got to get.
What did the Bible say? Would a man rob God?
That's right. But He'll pour you out a blessing that you can't take it all in. And so that's
where the abundance comes from.
The abundance mindset. And so I want people, if you want to be wealthy, don't know how to get there, you need this book. If you got children and you're concerned, like one man said to me, he said, my greatest fear, Dr. Jolley, is my children will not treat my money like I treated it and will go through in months what it took me decades and decades and decades to grow. He said, he bought 10 copies. He said, I'm buying one for every child and grandchild because they have to read this book before I put them in my will.
So how does the mindset shape the financial outcomes?
You're getting ready to go somewhere. There are five money mindsets. There are 5 money mindsets you and I see. The first is the lowest, or the lowest one is the one-day mindset. Somebody you see on the corner every day with a cardboard box saying, give me enough money for the day. The second mindset is the 30-day mindset. People who are on fixed income, on welfare, or on retirement, and they live month to month. The third mindset is the middle-class mindset, which is year to year. They say, did I get a cost of living raise this year? The fourth mindset is the rich mindset. We typically see that in entertainers or athletes. An athlete, a baseball player, get a 10-year contract to play baseball, $100 million, and he's balling for 10 years. But if he does not modify his lifestyle after that contract is over.
Let's talk about it.
If he don't modify that after that is over, then he's going to be broke. But the fifth mindset is the wealth mindset. It's called generation to generation to generation. The Bible says that a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's grandchildren.
Let's talk about a wealth we don't talk about enough.
Okay.
These agents and insurance companies and others who exploit those that build wealth, and they build their wealth on exploiting them through accounting and everything. This is why so many athletes go broke, because they don't have the education or the literacy to understand that they're being robbed blind.
That's right. And that is why I recently did a program, and a young man came up to me, or an older gentleman. He said, I want you to get this book to the NBA, NFL, and to the NIL. All these athletes who got millions coming into their bank bank account need to read this book, because their mama didn't tell them, their daddy didn't tell them, no one's ever told them. And let me tell you, Armstrong, let's talk about it for real. When you were growing up, and I was growing up, my mama told me, go to school, get a good education, get you a good job, and save your money.
No.
Right.
My parents told me I had to own. That's not
good.
That's not what my daddy and mama told
that's
me.
good. Well, they told me to go. They
No.
never talked about investment.
Oh, yes.
I'm glad you had parents that talk.
Different kind of parents.
My grandmother was the owner of a beauty salon, and she encouraged me to be entrepreneurial. But my mama had grown up through the Great Depression, and her father had lost her savings for college in the stock market crash. They never trusted the stock market again. But if he had just known about the fact that paper, if he didn't sell it for pennies on a dollar when it went bad and just held it, he would have become a millionaire. And so what I'm now trying to teach others is, hey, here's the secret to wealth. You gotta own, and you gotta be disciplined, and you gotta keep going.
You know what? You are such a blessing, brother.
Oh man, this is the big one.
I don't know if I was ready for all this today. The truth.
This is true. And God is, and you gotta give God the glory.
Always. What separates wealth builders' habits from spenders?
Discipline. Okay, they spend well. One is they don't pay interest. They don't pay interest. Wealthy people typically don't pay interest. One of the people
interest is paid to wealthy people on the money they're earning. Interest on the money they've already invested.
He's lucky. Either you understand interest, it either works for you or works against you. And the wealthy make it work for them. Those who are consumers make it work against them.
You know, I always say this to people when we talk about patience and building wealth, because a lot of young people and some older people want the microwave wealth. They want it quickly.
Yes.
They don't want it to grow up. I always say that patience and wealth is the honest man's revenge.
Absolutely. That's good. Look, I want everybody to go to richisgood, wealthyisbetter.com, get some of free chapters from the book. Rich is Good. If you get the book, get copies for your family members. Let me tell you, Armstrong, this book did not come from me. It came through me. And God is going to do something in our community, in this country, to help people grow their wealth. And I just give him the glory.
Listen, this is the way you should end a Monday night, last Monday night in January show with Willie Jolley, talking about wealth, the difference between wealth and being rich. And as I mentioned, Aaron and AD. But in real terms, you can have it. Patience, discipline, God first, and sacrifice. Thank you so much for joining us. Willie, all the best. Go buy that book.
That's right.
Go buy that book.
Rich is
We're
good,
out of
wealthy
here.
is better.
Rich is good, wealth is better.